Okay, welcome again to FTF Marketplace with myself, Tony Sharkey. It's absolutely Baltic up here in Newcastle. I'm joined today by Pete O'Rourke. Pete, how are you?
I'm very good, Tony. A bit like you, trying to stay warm as it is pretty cold up north.
Yeah, so we've got 45 minutes just talking about the January transfer window. Um, we have also got Alex Taylor from StatsBomb joining us a little bit later on. He's going to be doing a little bit of data on a couple of players that have moved in the window. But we'll get started. And just to start us off, we'll um, we'll talk about the window so far, Peter.
Yeah, still waiting for it to heat up, really, Tony. This January transfer window, a bit like the weather. It's pretty cold out there, but I'm sure there will be a thaw, and I expect business to start picking up from next week. Probably the biggest conclusion we'll get from this January transfer window is that money is tight. There won't be a lot of cash deals and money deals happening. No big money signings like we've had in previous January transfer windows. The one piece of big business we've had so far is Tottenham signing Radu Dragusin from Genoa. But that's been the biggest deal so far in the Premier League. I do expect other deals to follow, but we all know over years of experience what the January transfer window is like. There's a bit of a flurry early on, and then it goes into a bit of a lull in the middle of the month, and then the last 10 to 7 days, things will start moving. And looking at the requirements lists of a number of clubs, still a lot of clubs looking certain positions to be filled by the end of this window and looking to add to that squad for the second half of the season. So it's been a slow start so far, but I do think things will sort of kick into gear probably in the last 10 days or so.
Yeah, and I mean, this is what we're 17 days into the market. Um, there's been mostly loans, hasn't there? A bit of tidying up of squads, people returning and then going out again. Which is the key loans, do you think, that have happened, Pete?
Yeah, I think obviously, as you said, Tony, clubs are looking to balance their squads and trim their overall size of their squads as well and letting players out on loan. I do like the signing of Timo Werner that Tottenham have done. I think that's a really smart signing by them. They needed somebody to come in and bolster their attacking options. Werner was available from RB Leipzig. There was even talk that Manchester United were interested in him, but Tottenham obviously moved quickly, agreed that deal pretty much under the radar. And Timo Werner, the key thing for him is he wants to be playing regular first team football. He wants to be in that Germany squad ahead of the Euros. And also, I think for Werner himself, he might have a point to prove after his last spell in the Premier League didn't really come to the success he expected when he was at Chelsea. So I think that's a good signing for Tottenham. I'm sure there'll be others looking around that low market to see who else they can possibly bring in. But for me, so far, probably that Werner deal, one of
Mm.
the loans stands out to me. But yeah, it's just the current market, Tony, that clubs are
Yeah.
having to look in the loan market rather than permanent signings.
And going the other way to Germany from England, Eric Dyer and Jadon Sancho.
Yeah, big moves both for Sancho and Eric Dyer, both who were out of favour at their respective clubs. Obviously, we know why Jadon Sancho wasn't getting a look in at Manchester United. He had that very public fallout with Eric Ten Hag, and neither were willing to back down and apologise following that bust up. And great move for Borussia Dortmund and also for Jadon Sancho. He had such success at the German club previously to secure that big money move to Manchester United for £73 million a couple of years ago, but yeah, it's been an unhappy spell for Sancho right now, and he'll be hoping he can go back to Germany, find his best form, and really kick on. I think at Dortmund, and we'll see what the summer holds for him. While for Eric Dyer, he was probably the surprise signing
Yeah.
of the January transfer window so far. Brilliant move for him. Wasn't getting a look in at Tottenham. Really was fifth choice centre back. Even with all their injury problems, he was hardly getting a game. So it was pretty obvious he didn't figure in Ange Postecoglou's long-term plans, and but to get a move to the German giants, Bayern Munich, was probably beyond his wildest dreams. But to be fair to Eric Dyer, he's got great experience, and the key thing I think for Bayern Munich here was that he can play in a couple of positions. He can
Yeah.
play centre back, and he can also play central defensive midfield as well, and that's two areas of the team that they'll be looking to strengthen in January. So great moves for Dyer and Sancho, and they'll be hoping that they can have good second half of the seasons at Dortmund and Munich respectively.
And I always think that the it's a bit like the housing market analogy. You know, if the Premier League is spending big money or buying players from other leagues, like the Championship, like the SPL, then that has a knock-on effect for those clubs in those leagues, so that then they can go out and buy a player, or they can, get an expensive loan signing. So what are your thoughts on the Championship and the SPL? Is that just waiting to ignite, just like the Premier League?
Yeah, I think it's definitely waiting to ignite. It's waiting for that filter down effect as well, as you've just mentioned, Tony. These clubs in the Championship and the Scottish Premiership don't have big budgets right now. A lot of the championship clubs are struggling financially as it is, so they're not able to go out there and spend money in this transfer window. You're probably looking at the three clubs that came down from the Premier League last season who have money to spend, the likes of Leicester, Southampton, and also Leeds. But looking even at those clubs, Leeds are looking at loan deals potentially. I don't think Leicester are in any real rush to make any signings as they're well clear at the top of the league. And
yeah,
Southampton have so far only brought in Joe Rothwell on a loan from Bournemouth, and he's not been playing at Bournemouth, so it's a good opportunity for him to go to Southampton, try and help them win promotion. But in the Scottish Premiership, I'm probably just looking at Celtic and Rangers, two teams who might have a bit of a finance to go out and do some deals. Obviously, we've seen Celtic make a big signing in Nicholas Kuhn from Rapid Vienna, who I'm sure we will discuss later with Alex
yeah,
when he
yeah,
comes
yeah.
on. So they've spent a bit of money on him, so it'll be exciting to see what he can offer to Brendan Rodgers' side. Well, a good signing from Rangers as well was the loan signing of Fabio Silva from Wolves, a very highly rated player when he joined Wolves, who spent a lot of money on him, and it'll be interesting to see how he does up in Scotland and in the Scottish Premiership. Can he be the man to score the goals for Rangers to help them close the gap in Celtic? So it's tough going out there for a lot of clubs. We've seen obviously the three key words in football talk these days is FFP and PSR right now, Tony. So a lot of
Yeah.
clubs have to juggle that and cope with that, and that's maybe help affecting this transfer window so far.
Well, let's talk about that, because FFP, P and S, profit and sustainability. I had I don't know whether it's my sort of quiet January, but I actually watched the parliamentary select committee where Richard Masters and Rick Parry, yeah, we're talking about all, getting questioned. Every time you turn the TV on at the moment, there's politicians grilling people about all sorts of stuff, and it was their turn this time. And it seems like they've shown the teeth. The Premier League, it's starting to bite, and this profit and sustainability. We just had, obviously, Everton have had a 10-point deduction, which sort of has really put a question mark over their whole season. And now, we're back to the same situation where there's another two clubs. But for me, the general point is these rules have been agreed at a Premier League meeting. They're in place, and two clubs have fallen foul of the rules. But the FA, the Premier League, are really showing the teeth, and the panel have given Everton a 10-point deduction. Is that why it's so quiet out there?
Yeah, 100%. I think that's had a major effect on transfer business so far this window. Teams, Premier League teams all across England, I think, are running scared of FFP and PSR right now. They've seen what's happened. As you said, the Premier League have given that points deduction to Everton, and now facing another 6-point deduction following the second breach of the rules, while Nottingham Forest themselves also now breaching the rules and also potentially facing 6 points. And if those deductions do happen, it's going to throw both teams right into that relegation dogfight, and that would be a real colossal blow to both clubs if they were to suffer relegation from the Premier League this season. We all know the Premier League is the cash cow. It's where everybody wants to be. That's where you can make your money. And for Everton, got to feel a bit of sympathy for them to be done twice in the same season. If they were to get a 16-point deduction, that would be very, very harsh on them, I think, right now. Obviously, there's extenuating circumstances that Everton are appealing against. They're trying to build a new stadium. So they're obviously putting a lot of emphasis on that, of why they have gone over the threshold of FFP as well. While for Nottingham Forest, we could probably all see this coming at Forest after their massive splurge in the transfer market last summer and also in January, when I think around 30 new players were brought in. But again, they will argue that they probably needed a big outlay of players because they were coming up to the Premier League and they wanted to compete, and they made a success of it by staying up in the Premier League last season and avoiding that relegation dogfight. So yeah, it's difficult, but for right now, for all football clubs, it's time to get your house in order. Otherwise, you're going to get hit with these deductions, and that could be calamitous for these clubs if it did end up in relegation.
Well, it feels to me, Pete, that the Premier League are actively trying to rein in spending. I look back to the January transfer window, last year's January transfer window, and I've got a figure here that of £780 million spent and 70 odd signings in that last January transfer window. Now, you mentioned Forest went on the splurge. It wasn't quite as big as the splurge that Chelsea went on in that particular window. I think they accounted for probably half of that 700 odd million in the Todd Bowley, the start of the Todd Bowley era. So, what do you make of that?
Yeah, well, obviously Chelsea themselves are under investigation under the Roman Abramovich era, so still waiting for the Premier League to see what they do with that one. But as you said, Chelsea under Todd Bowley have been splashing the cash pretty readily. I think in the last three transfer windows have spent over £1 billion. Probably the difference between Everton, Forest, and Chelsea right now is I think latest figures I looked at was that Chelsea have recouped close to 500 million as well in that cycle. So obviously that helps with the FFP and the PSR rules as well. So I think maybe that's why they're not being closely as scrutinised like Everton and Nottingham Forest, where they have sold players, and that's why still links exist right now that Chelsea would be willing to listen to offers for the likes of Conor Gallagher, homegrown player, because if they were to sell him, that would be pure profit for them and would really help in the FFP situation as well. And that's why we've seen other players leave Chelsea, homegrown players, because they know that they will get maximum profit on that one as well. Even talk that Levi Colwell could be a target for other clubs because of his homegrown status. And we've seen Manchester City being quite clever. They've sold the likes of Cole Palmer, Raheem Sterling recently just to recoup money and bolster the finances after spending big themselves in the transfer market. So I think some clubs have been quite smart in how they've got round FFP as well, but it's definitely shown its teeth, only the Premier League, and I think that's the main reason why we haven't seen so much money being spent in this window so far.
Yeah, I've got a question actually for those who are listening, and you can put it in the chat if you can. Who in the January 2023 window, who actually made a profit or had more income than expenditure on their transfer dealings in the Premier League? So if you can put that in the chat. And by the way, we've got the chat open. You can share your LinkedIn profiles, but just put that in the chat and let's see what we get. 2 clubs who made a profit in January 2023. Okay, I'm not seeing much there. I don't know whether the chat's working. I'll put you out of your misery. Do you know, Pete?
I'd Harper guess Brentford being one, maybe.
Nope.
Oh, obviously a well-run club as well. Obviously Brighton.
Brighton, correct. Yeah, it was Brighton and Everton, because Everton sold Anthony Gordon, which relates to your point you were making about, selling he was right through the academy, wasn't he, Anthony Gordon? So that phrase you used, pure profit on Anthony Gordon, and I was a bit surprised seeing him go to Newcastle, leaving his sort of club at home, homegrown player, leaving Everton and joining a rival. But obviously, the financial implications of that move have started to sort of bite. So we talked a bit about Everton and Forest. What's striking me is that it's more about our friend, one of our friends, Kieran Maguire, who is the sort of king of financial reporting in football. It seems to me the game's a little bit more about accountants, and lawyers than ever before. The lads are playing on the pitch, and the coaches are doing the best, the best job that they possibly can, and yet it's going to be decided in rooms where lawyers are involved, accountants are involved, and that doesn't seem right to me, Pete.
No, definitely not. times have changed. Football definitely is a business now, rather than just being the working man's game that it was years ago, which we all loved. But yeah, we're talking more about spreadsheets than playing field on the field right now, and that's the real concern for the everyday supporter who just cares about results of their team.
Yeah.
They're not worried about
But the Chelsea, the Chelsea splurge was 8-year contracts, so that if you spent 80 million, it was 10 million over 8 years in the accounts, and that sort of made some sort of financial sense. I heard Darren Eales speaking about it up at Newcastle, and we'll get on to Newcastle in a bit. But let's go and talk about Manchester United, because obviously there's been big news just before Christmas, Pete.
Yeah, huge news now with Ineos and Sir Jim Ratcliffe. His investment into the club should be totally clarified and confirmed probably early next month. He says he's already been attending games, and also Sir Dave Brailsford has been going around and overseeing things at Manchester United to see where the club can make changes structurally, and that's going to be the key for Manchester United right now. They've made so many mistakes in the transfer market over the last few seasons. They really have lost so much money on players. You look at Jadon Sancho, spent over £70 million in him, and now he's been loaned out to Borussia Dortmund. Anthony from Ajax, seen as an expensive flop by a lot of people.
I liked Anthony. I saw him at the Tournoi Morris Revelon. He was my pick from that tournament. I really liked him, but it just hasn't worked on a lot of levels.
Yeah, no. Obviously, there's a player in there. Definitely, there's no doubts about that. He's been highly thought of in his native Brazil, and also when he was at Ajax. But we're still to see the best of him. A lot of people questioning the amount of money that United did spend on Rasmus Højlund as well when they signed him from Atalanta. So there's going to be question marks over United's transfer dealings until they do get a proper structure in, and that's what Sir Jim Ratcliffe and Dave Brailsford are trying to do. They're looking to bring in a new director of football, also somebody in head of recruitment. Dan Ashworth from Newcastle has been talked about quite strongly for a while now, and he's earned himself a reputation as one of the best in the business. I think during his time with England, and also with West Brom, and now also with when he was at Brighton, and the job he's doing at Newcastle right now as well. He's one of the most influential figures probably in football recruitment and how to run a club. So he would be a great signing for Manchester United if they could get him in. It'd be probably better than any signing they could get on the pitch, I think, in my opinion, if they can get him in.
Yeah,
Paul Mitchell, maybe.
I totally agree, Pete. I think they should have a really quiet transfer window, Man United. I don't know whether you've heard what positions they might be looking for, but I think you're absolutely spot on. Get the structure, get the culture, get everything right, and then maybe look. It's almost, I daren't say it because people, it's almost a write-off this season. He gets himself into the club, and that's Sir Jim Radcliffe. Gets himself in the club, gets the structures right, and from then on, the decision making and who's buying the players, the smart transfer money, which I think United has been criticised of wasting quite a lot of money in the transfer market. So I think I agree with you, and I'm based up in Newcastle, and I've known Dan Ashworth for a long time, and I'm not speaking out of turn. I haven't any particular information, and I wouldn't divulge it if I did, but I know it's been mentioned. I think Darren Eales has mentioned the link, and whether that happens, who knows? But I totally agree with you, Pete. He is one of the best in the business. There's no doubt, and I think Brighton are still feeling the benefit. England are still feeling the benefit of those years he was the FA technical director. So that would be a really good appointment. Let's talk about Newcastle, since you mentioned Dan Ashworth. I was listening to Darren Eales, and Darren Eales was talking, obviously the CEO, talking about FFP, P&S, whatever you want to call it, and this thing about we can't spend, and a lot of the fans up here just want to hear, right? We're a rich club now. Who are we buying in the next window? What's happening up there, Pete?
Yeah, it's a difficult one for Newcastle to juggle. Obviously, the money is there from the owners, but they just can't spend it due to FFP regulations. That's probably a real frustration for everyone connected with Newcastle United, because they wanted to build on the success they had last year, qualifying for the Champions League, and to do that, you need to go out and buy some of the best players in the market. But after what Darren Eales has revealed when the club announced those recent losses of over £70 million, it's like looks like Newcastle are going to have to tighten their belts and to really be sort of wheeling and dealing in the market by possibly selling players to raise funds for their own transfer plans as well. So lots of talk that Eddie Howe might have to lose one of his prize assets in the summer just to help him in his own plans for the transfer window next summer. The talk of Bruno Guimaraes possibly leaving. There's been talk of Paris Saint-Germain, Barcelona being interested in him. Also, Alex Isak is another one who could generate a big transfer fee as well. He's been a good signing for Newcastle since arriving from Real Sociedad. There's been rumours of Arsenal being in for him as well. And if you're Eddie Howe, the last thing you want to do now is weaken your squad. That would be a huge blow to him if he had to cash in on Bruno or for Alex Isak.
I think they're thin on the ground as it is. You know, I watched the Man City match, which was a fantastic advert for the Premier League. It was almost going back to the Aguero days. You know, you score in the last sort of minute and what have you. It was a really good match. I mean, obviously City dominate possession and Newcastle are sat in and trying to catch. Well, they did catch him on the break with two superb goals, but City wear them down. And when you look to the Newcastle bench, as opposed to looking at the City bench, and there's Kevin De Bruyne sat next to Jack Grealish, and then they're bringing a wonder boy who scores the winner. You know, it just shows you the gulf. Even we've got 20 teams in the Premier League. The gulf of the top 4 or 5 teams to the rest is quite substantial, isn't it? You know, and I think Newcastle look like they've got young Lewis Miley on the pitch there. You look at the bench and who you're bringing on. You know, they've had the problem with Tonali with his betting ban, and obviously Harvey Barnes, who I really, really like, injured quite early on. So, you know, for me, they need a lot. You know, 3 or 4 players. Whether there's money to do that, I don't know.
Yeah, I think Eddie Howe would love right now to go out and spend some money in the transfer market, but he can't. Obviously, Calvin Phillips is a name that's on Newcastle's radar, but even that loan deal looks too expensive for Newcastle right now, with Manchester City looking at a huge fee for the loan, and also he's got big wages to be paid as well. So I think Eddie Howe really wants to bring in at least one midfielder due to the Tonali ban, and now his need for a midfielder has been heightened by Joe Linton's injury, looking like he could miss the rest of the season. So difficult times for Newcastle. It's all a learning process for them. Obviously, their opponents last weekend, Manchester City, have been building their squad for a number of seasons now, and that's why they've got so much strength and depth. When you look at it, you just mentioned Jack Grealish, they're a £100 million player on the bench. What chance have other clubs of catching up when you've got that type of stuff? Kevin De Bruyne coming back from injury, also on the bench, and Erling Haaland wasn't even fit to play that game either. So the strength and depth that Manchester City have got is staggering, and that's why they are the best team in Europe, if not the world, and they will continue to grow as much as they can, and it just makes it harder and harder for the rest to catch up. But for Newcastle, I think they're going to have to take a few hits, probably with losing a few players, a bit like Liverpool maybe did a couple of seasons ago when they sold Philippe Coutinho to Barcelona, and then were able to go out and bring in the likes of Virgil van Dijk and Alisson, and that really helped them move up to another level as well. So I think Newcastle, due to these FFP regulations, they're going to have to wheel and deal and maybe sell some of their prize assets just to help Eddie Howe bring in other signings as well. But for me, Tony, I don't know if you feel, I think times are changing. I think maybe those FFP regulations are a bit out of date and need to be updated, considering you're only allowed a loss of 105 million over a 3-year cycle. Players are going for £100 million these days. So
yeah. Well, I mean, that was the debate with the Parliament committee. They were talking about getting the mechanisms right. I mean, there was a lot of talk about the parachute payments, but getting the mechanisms right in the Premier League. And I think I think I agree that I think the central thing is all of these, talk about the football regulator. The Premier League is a product that's the best in the world, and it's we shouldn't try to devalue it by putting rules in there that are going to prevent it from maintaining its position and even growing to be even bigger, because it's such an asset to our country. I felt when Rick Parry was talking, he did have the begging bowl out for the Championship and sort of like and League One and League Two and the pyramid, but For me, I think keeping the Premier League, who are pumping a lot of money into football, but keeping the Premier League as the top product is an absolute necessity. If we start denigrating the Premier League by altering some sort of mechanism and rules and spending, then it won't be long before La Liga clubs, Serie A clubs, the Bundesliga, Saudi Arabia start catching up and maybe even take some viewers off the Premier League.
Yeah, 100%. I think also on that point as well, I think the agents' regulations being changed on the commissions was a big win for the English agents, because if they weren't to get their commission and win that against FIFA, you might have seen a lot of the top players ending up going to Germany or Spain or Italy,
Well,
because I think that would
that's
have really
a whole other webinar, Pete. That one. I've done
that
a
is a
few of
different way.
them,
We
to
haven't
be
got enough
fair.
time probably to go into that one, but as you
Yeah.
said, the Premier League is such a good product that they really wouldn't want to see the top players go elsewhere.
Can I ask you about a club that I really like, Brentford? Because for me, the likes of Brentford, the likes of Brighton, what Luton have done is absolutely outstanding. These sort of clubs, but Brentford in particular, they started with a strategy using data, and not just that. When they get a player in the door, they improve him massively. And I've had a player at Brentford, so I know what goes on behind the scenes. And when you look at somebody like Ollie Watkins coming into Brentford from Exeter, a young man, and look at what he's doing now, and obviously they got a big fee for him. But Brentford, what do you think about them in the January window? I think there's just been some breaking news today, hasn't there, Pete?
Yeah, Brentford are looking like they are going to do a piece of business, bringing in Sergio Reguilon from Spurs on loan. It's been an
Mm.
area of the team they've needed to strengthen since Rico Henry picked up that serious injury earlier in the season. He's been a big miss for Thomas Frank's side, so bringing in Reguilon on loan. Not a normal deal that Brentford would do. They don't really like doing loan deals. They would prefer to do permanent deals. And as you said, Tony, develop that player themselves rather than develop a player who's owned by another club. But needs must, I think, for Brentford right now. They
Yeah,
need someone
yeah,
to come in and help them at full back. Reguilon will do that. He had the first half of the season on loan at Manchester United. They ended that loan for him to go back to Tottenham, but he's not on Tottenham's plans. So I think it's a good deal for everybody involved.
yeah.
Good deal for Tottenham. Good deal for Brentford.
I think it's a smart move. Look, they're not out of the woods yet in terms of the relegation battle. Despite what we're saying about Everton and Forest maybe picking up, more point deductions. Ivan Toney coming back though, that's like a whole new ball game, a fresh signing. Probably half the teams in the Premier League would love to. Well, all the teams probably in the Premier League would love to have Ivan Toney, but he's coming back this weekend apparently, and that's going to be a massive boost for their. Let's call it like it is. They've got to stay in the Premier League first and foremost. Got to stay in the Premier League. That's going to be a massive boost to their sort of hopes to stay in the Premier League.
Yeah, I think Ivan Toney, as you said, Tony, he's like a new signing coming in now at this important juncture of the season. He's been sorely missed by Brentford, not just for his goals, but his overall play. He's instrumental in how Brentford play and how Thomas Frank wants his side to play. He's a focal point in attack, and I think the key thing here for Brentford is they're going to get a hungry, determined player who wants to make up for lost time following that ban. He's got the Euros in his sight as well. This summer, he'll be hoping they can do enough to win a place in Gareth Southgate's squad. And also, long term, he's probably thinking he can try and put himself back in that shop window because, as you said, some of the big Premier League clubs are looking at him probably too expensive for this window. And due to
Yeah.
the fact that he's only coming back from his ban, I don't think any move will happen. Brentford can't really afford to let him go because he could be the difference between them staying up and being involved in a relegation dogfight. So huge boost for Brentford to see Ivan Toney back in that shirt, and I'm sure he'll hit that ground running because he's been playing for the under 21s and he's been scoring goals there. And I'm sure the Brentford fans and all everybody connected with Brentford will welcome him back with open arms this weekend against Nottingham Forest.
Yeah, if you're an under 21 centre half, you've been a little bit unlucky if you've met Brentford recently in Brentford B or whatever it is. But yeah, no, that's interesting. AFCON though has affected Brentford as well, and that's another thing that we've got to contend with in this particular January window because people do need reinforcements because of AFCON.
Yeah, obviously we've got AFCON and also the Asian Cup. So a number of teams have seen their squads decimated by players leaving for their international teams. Mo Salah, obviously, probably the most high profile, going
Yeah.
away with Egypt. So Liverpool will be missing him for a few weeks. We've also got the likes of Tomiyasu at Arsenal, who's away with Japan at the Asian Cup as well. And I think probably the team that's really been hit the most by this international action in January is Nottingham Forest. I think as many as 6 players missing from their squad right now as well. So they'll be keen to get them back as soon as possible, because it does look like they're going to be involved in a relegation dogfight. But yeah, that's another reason maybe why this transfer window has been a bit slower, because of these
Yeah.
international tournaments as well.
But you can't really just buy a player in for a month to cover the loss of half a dozen players out of your team, or 2 or 3 players. It doesn't work like that in football, does it? And you've got these 25-man squads and everything else. So it's a fine balance in that. So it's a real Rubik's cube of a January transfer window. I think it's a very unusual January transfer window because of the lack of big money deals so far, because of the cups, because of the financial fair play, all of that. But yeah, that I think that's another thing that's dragging on the potential transfers. There's players away, and they're seeing how they're doing, are they coming back early, or are they in for the long run for the whole of the tournament? It's that type of thing. Look, we've been joined by Alex. Hi, Alex. How are you?
Hi, Tony. I'm good, thanks. Yourself?
You all right? Yeah. I'm good. Yeah. Where are you at the moment?
I'm in Bath at the moment, so not my usual exotic self. Back in England for a bit.
I presume it's freezing down in Bath, just like the rest of the country.
It was about -4 when I woke up. It was lovely and warm.
So, Alex, you work for StatsBomb. What's your title at StatsBomb? I can't remember.
At the moment, I'm soccer sales manager, so leading the sales team for us. But I've worn a number of different hats at StatsBomb, from the analysis side to product development. They seem to change every year at the moment. But yeah, do you want me to give a little bit about StatsBomb as well? Who we
If you
are?
want to, yeah. I mean, but just talk to us about what you do in terms of helping clubs and agents in the transfer market.
Yeah, 100%. So StatsBomb, we were founded now for almost 7 years ago, but we work with 75% of the clubs in the Premier League. We work with more and more agents. We provide them with, I think, I'd like to call it contextual data. I think a lot of providers provide just raw numbers, so number of passes, number of tackles, and things like that, but there's not really much context around that.
Yeah.
We've tried to add a few things in, like our on-ball value model, which gives you a little bit more of a, what is the pass worth? How does it help the team? And that sort of number really helps teams, identify potential players that are identifiable through other types of data, but also confirm certain players. So I don't know if you want me to show you it now, but I've got a few things on some of the Spurs signings that we can look at.
Yeah, let me just get you to share. Just hold on, I'll just allow you to share your screen. Co-host, I think that's right. Oh, I'm making people. No, that's wrong. Let me just make you a co-host so you can share your screen. Yeah, Pete's sort of given us a heads up on a couple of the Spurs signings and the Celtic signings, but you were going to go and show us some.
Just a little bit more context as to how I like to see it. Obviously, Spurs have signed a great player. I actually remember Dragazin. I did a report on him. I think at the time he was in Juve's youth, and I just remember thinking this lad's got something. He's a big, powerful centre back, defends on the front foot, and just a very interesting profile. When you look into the numbers, you kind of get that as well. He's I think something you need to remember is his age. He's only 21, which is incredible. He's played the second most amount of minutes in the top 5 leagues for an under 22-year-old as a centre back, which is, that's something you need to take into account as well nowadays. Is can you actually handle, the demands of a top 5 league and be able to play consistently? He played most of the minutes for Genoa as well in Serie B last year. And he's an interesting profile in the box as well. I think what he's going to add is potentially some goals and set pieces for Spurs as well. He was one of the best scorers last year in Serie B, but this year he's actually top for goals scored and top for XG for centre backs under 23. It just shows the presence he has in the opposition box. But also, in the top 5 leagues again, he's number 12 on one-on-one defending on the ground for under 22-year-olds, which is quite incredible. There's about, I think, 50, 60 names in that list, and he's in the top 12 for one-on-one defending on the ground. So I think what you can say is he's a player that really has a lot of potential. On the left of the screen here, you'll see a radar. So his numbers are in red. The league average is in blue. So this is from last season. You can see he's maybe not going way over the league average. But again, remember his age. Remember, how old he is, and the fact that he's doing that at this age really shows some interesting promise. So I think that's really exciting. And I think the other signing that we're going to look at is Timo Werner, and what a start he had at the weekend. It may be something Spurs were missing. He just looked exciting. He brought the ball to Man United. He got an assist in the game. I thought it reminded me of Leipzig before he went to Chelsea. You have to remember, before he went to Chelsea, he was one of the most sought after strikers in Europe at the time. And if you go back to it and you look at it and say, okay, well, even at Chelsea, he wasn't that bad, actually. And I think people misremember him a little bit because he didn't score that many goals. Whilst he was there, he was 7th on XG per 90 in the league, in the Premier League. And this was a league where you still had Salah in there. You had Marcus Rashford doing well. You had a lot of good players in that league at the time. To be 7th is not an easy thing to do. So that's something people need to remember. He is actually a very, very good player. The season before that, he came to the Premier League. He was 2nd in the Bundesliga for XG per 90. Only Lewandowski got more XG than he did. I mean, again, that's Lewandowski. We all know how good he is. And the team he was playing in, again, that's something that's quite incredible. Comes in the first game, he got the highest dribble and carry on ball value, so one of the contextual metrics that we have. So that's telling me how he carried the ball, dribbled with the ball, and took the ball towards the Man United box. He was the best in the game at doing that. He provided the most value with the ball at his feet, and he was also the 2nd highest in terms of actual contribution to XG and XG assisted. And that's in his first game. And he didn't even, I don't think he played the full 90 minutes, but correct me if I'm wrong.
I can't remember, but
I kicked him off.
Sorry, what was that, Pete?
He did come off near the end, but yeah, he had a good debut, definitely.
But the other thing about the January window, which I always think is important, is that, if you can get players who can hit the ground running, who don't have a long adaptation period, maybe drag us in, will have to adapt. He maybe, whether they'll use him sparingly this season and maybe kick on for next season. But Timo Werner obviously knows the Premier League. He knows London. Probably moved into his old flat, straight in, and it's an easier thing for the players just to come straight in and hit the ground running, isn't it?
100%, Tony. And actually, if you think about it, he's proven that he could create chances in the Premier League. And if you look at his metrics, he's in red there. He's way above the league average, and apart from one thing, the goals, and it just didn't fall for him. And when you dig into it a little bit, he got a little bit unlucky as well. And you look at the shots that got saved as well, and you're like, well, actually, that's a really good save. He was a little bit unlucky there, but he just provides something different to Tottenham. He was one of the best in the league, if you can see on the left here, receiving balls behind the line, so line-breaking passes received in the final third. He was one of the best in the league at the time as well in that. So he's going to provide something else.
Alex, I've not seen, I've seen some of these. I'm glad you're going through them, but those look pretty strong. Like you say, they look pretty strong on the league average. And for the general opinion to be, he had a really tough time at Chelsea, that doesn't really reflect in that, does it?
Exactly. I think it was one of those where he underperformed his XG at Chelsea. He should have scored more goals, but Lewandowski had seasons at Bayern Munich where he was under his XG as well. And in the end, it was a very small sample size. Can you say he's a good or bad finisher at the moment? You can't. It was just too small a sample size. You can see on the right here, this was actually last season with Leipzig, and he actually got 9 goals from 8.3 expected goals. So he's slightly over his XG. So then obviously the Bundesliga is a different league, and I understand that, but he has shown signs that he can actually finish as well. And from the quality he has, we know he can. If it goes right for him
And
at
also, I mean,
Tottenham,
confidence, Alex. I know that's not in the data, but you get a goal on your debut, and everyone's going, "Oh, he's a player, isn't he?" You miss a chance on your debut, and everyone's, "Oh, what?" Do you know what I mean? It's that type of thing in terms of the actual the mood of the player, and he's going in on goal thinking he's going to score when his confidence is up.
100%, yeah. The confidence will play a big part. But as I said again, he was very good at pressing when he was at Chelsea, as you can see on the left here. He was getting touches in the box, he was getting shots, he was getting good quality shots. And really it was just a matter of maybe time, a little bit more luck. At the time, the Chelsea team was also struggling to score, so you have to take that into account as well. So, loads of factors maybe played against him, but as a loan for Tottenham, it seems like a no-brainer to me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Pete, can I just bring you in on that? What's your thoughts about the Postecoglou revolution down at Tottenham, and the wheeling and dealing that has been done?
Yeah, all positive signs so far under Ange Postecoglou. He's changed the culture there. Obviously, they were seen as a bit of a negative team under Antonio Conte. He was obviously very defensive in his approach, but Postecoglou is probably the complete opposite of that. And as Alex mentioned, I think that will really play into the hands of Timo Werner. He'll be given freedom by Postecoglou to attack down that left-hand side. He's filling the boots of Son right now, who's away at the Asian Cup with South Korea. But as I said, great debut. Postecoglou, he's a front forward manager. He wants to play on the front foot. He wants to attack. Obviously, there's been a few criticisms of his pressing style and maybe being a bit too gung ho at times, especially in that Chelsea game when they were down to 9 men. It was something you would see in the school play yard, I think. But Tottenham fans loving life under Ange Postecoglou right now. Making some smart signings as well. Like Alex, I think Dragusin could be an absolute brilliant signing by Tottenham. We'll probably talk about it more in the future when he does settle into the Premier League as well. But he's been likened as a Romanian Van Dijk, and if he has half the impact that Virgil van Dijk has had in the Premier League, it'll be a smart piece of business by Tottenham to bring him in. Great age, and again, talking about the stats or the line breaking passes, he can do that from centre back. So he'll be, when he gets the ball and he's in that team, he'll be looking for those runs from Timo Werner as well. So Tottenham's strategy so far this January has been really smart. They've sort of brought in 2 signings to fill in problematic positions for them. Just the one more position, ideally, if they could bring in this January, would be a central midfielder. Conor Gallagher has been talked about a lot, but I think it's too hard of a deal to do due to Chelsea's price tag. But yeah, I think you got to take your hats off to Tottenham, Ange Postecoglou and the recruitment team there right now.
If you look at that Tottenham back line now with Mickey van der Ven as well, you've got potentially a couple of centre backs that could be at the club for the next 10 years, even potentially. They're 2 very young, hot prospects in Europe, and it's good to see them both in the Premier League.
Let's move on to the signing that Celtic made just recently. It's totally unknown to me.
Nicholas Kuhn, he's probably one of the most exciting players in Austria when he moved. And actually, it comes out in the data. This season he had the highest XG assisted, the joint most assists. He was 7th for XG as well, and he was 3rd for on-ball value. So on-ball value is just bringing everything together: passing, dribbling, shooting, everything. And he just came out on top on most of the metrics. He looked like a really, really good player. So he's one of them where, again, very good age to bring him in. You can see his super strength is creating chances for other players. You can see where he's creating the chances here, right in the centre of the box on the 6-yard line. He is really looking like a very, very exciting player. It'll be interesting to see how he adapts to the Scottish League and the Scottish weather as well. But he's going to be a very good player, and he has got a very, very good passing ability. And again, you can see on the right hand side here with the radar, above the league average on a lot of things. He was a little bit under on turnovers, but the reason was he was taking loads of dribbles. He was taking players on, and he was trying to do things. So you might lose the ball, but it's because he's taking people on, and you can see with his dribble and carry on ball value, again, way above the league average. So you know, even if he does lose the ball sometimes, overall the value he's bringing when he does dribble is way above what you'd expect from a player in his position. So very, very good all round, and it was very exciting actually looking through the numbers for him, and just finding number that he was either top or top three, top five in the league for. So yeah, and when I say highest for XG assisted, that's for all positions, all ages, everything. He got the high. He's created the most chances in Austria this season. So a very, very exciting profile for Celtic, and I think potentially filling in again an area that they have some very good players as well, Celtic, but bringing something else in there that could really, really help them.
And Pete, what's your view on Celtic in this window? Is that going to be the only piece of business?
I don't think it'll be the only piece of business. It'll probably be the biggest piece of business that Celtic do. I think they've spent over £3 million on Kuhn. But yeah, as Alex said, looks a really exciting player. He sort of fits the profile for Brendan Rodgers, what he likes, a dynamic player on the front foot, will score goals, will create goals as well. I think he could really hit the ground running up in the Scottish Premiership, and a big signing for Celtic. Also, I think Brendan Rodgers ideally would like to bring in another forward if he can in this window. He wants to ease the burden on Kyogo and have some more goals in the team. So if they can find a striker, maybe potentially on loan, that might be something they might do. Sidney van Hooijdonk, who is the son of former Celtic hero Pierre van Hooijdonk from Bologna. He's one name that's on their list as well. So we'll see if Celtic are able to do anything on that deal. Also, maybe a left back. I think in an ideal world, if Brendan Rodgers could bring somebody in for that area of the team, he would look to strengthen as well. And I think looking ahead probably to the summer rather than this month, goalkeeper is going to be a key position for Celtic and their recruitment team over the next couple of transfer windows, because Joe Hart is coming to the end of his contract, and they will probably be looking to bring in a replacement for him and add competition in that department as well.
Cool. Right, we're up. Time's up, but we'll go into a little bit of injury time because we haven't covered one of the teams that I was wanting to talk about. My sort of hometown club of Middlesbrough. Obviously a championship club. Michael Carrick doing a tremendous job there. They've made a couple of signings, Pete.
Yeah, I think Middlesbrough have done some decent business so far in the window. Really like the look of Finn Azaz, who they've signed on a permanent deal from Aston Villa. Was hugely impressive during his loan spell at Plymouth. Was one of their star players, and I don't know if you've seen his goal over Christmas time as well. A brilliant volley from the edge of the box, which really brought him on the radar of a number of clubs. But yeah, I think he's a player with huge potential. Will only get better and better, and I think working under somebody like Michael Carrick, we'll see him improve his game as well. So he's a good signing for the future and for now. One just for now is Luke Ayling, who they've brought in loan from Leeds United, been a lead stalwart over the years. Great servant to them, but really underrated player in my opinion. He does a great job from right back. Loves to bomb forward as well and try and provide goals and everything else. So good experience. I think he could be a good signing for Middlesbrough in this window as well. And I think Michael Carrick's not done there just yet. He would like to add a few more faces if he can to try and make it late, push for those playoffs. Probably a striker is his number one priority between now and the end of the window.
Yeah, I've seen Middlesbrough a couple of times this season, and yeah, I agree with that. Obviously, they've got to replay the second leg of the Chelsea game ahead of them as well. It's looking, the top of the championship. Well, Middlesbrough just below the playoff places, but the top of the championship looks pretty sewn up at the moment. It just looks a bit of a procession, really. And I think a lot of clubs in Middlesbrough's part of the table are just looking for, can we get into the playoffs again? Middlesbrough last year, playoff places with Sunderland, Luton, and Coventry. But this year it looks like the teams that came down from the Premier League have, on the whole, retained their best players. Have sold one or two each of them, but they've retained most of the team, and it just seems like it's going to be tough going for the rest of them.
Yeah, I think it's going to be tough going. You see Leicester being runaway leaders, looking to go and set new records, and I do expect them to go on and win promotion back to the Premier League under Enzo Maresca, who's done a remarkable job. Southampton been on a really great run of late, 20 games unbeaten, joint club record, so they'll be right up there. Also Leeds are on good form, scoring lots of goals under Daniel Farke, who's been there, done it in the Championship to win promotion as well. But I think you have to give real credit to Ipswich, Tony, as well. What a season they're having under Kieran McKenna, who's one of the brightest young coaches around, I think, right now. And to have them in that promotion push is a fair play to Ipswich, the coaching team and the recruitment team, because they've made some good signings as well, bringing in experienced and young players. So yeah, the championship, although Leicester have been running away with it, still going to be highly competitive to see who can probably join them in that promotion push.
And Ipswich coming up from League One, you know, you rarely see the teams coming up from League One doing so well in the Championship, because it is just such a brutal and tough league, isn't it?
Oh yeah, very competitive league, as we all know, the Championship. But Ipswich had that momentum from last year from winning promotion. They've really gone for it. They have spent a bit of money in the summer transfer window as well to bolster the squad. And as I said, Kieran McKenna deserves a lot of credit for what he's done there at Portman Road. And I think they'll be hoping they can last the pace, but it's really going to be hard when you've got Southampton and Leeds breathing down their necks for that second automatic promotion spot as well. But I'm sure they'll give it a good go.
And Alex, just before we do wrap up, is there anything more from you about the January transfer window? Any observations from a data point of view, or from, you know, some of the clubs that you're thinking about?
I'd just echo what Pete said about Finn Azaz. I think he's an absolutely brilliant signing. He was, I think, top 5 in terms of scoring contribution from midfield in that first part of the Championship season, and I think he's going to be a very valuable addition to the Middlesbrough team that was maybe, I wouldn't say struggling for goals, but maybe lacking as many goals as they had last year with a few key players like Chuba Akpom moving to Ajax. And
yeah, how's Chuba Akpom doing these days at Ajax? Because he wasn't playing at the start, and then he started. Has he been scoring down at Ajax?
I think he's got 9 goals this season so far, and pretty much any time he comes on the pitch, he scores. But when you've got Brian Bobby in front of you, then it's always hard to get on the pitch. But he's doing very well over there. And then the other thing is just to echo what Pete was saying about Ipswich as well. It's an incredible first season in the Championship for them with Kieran McKenna. After being promoted from the League One, you don't expect that, but I think stylistically he's got it very right. They're 4th in the league for the percentage of pressures they have in the opposition half, so they've really taken the game to the opposition, and I think a lot of teams just haven't been able to cope with that. So yeah, I wish them the best for the second half of the season, but as you said, with Southampton and Leeds coming very close behind, I think it could be quite difficult.
Yeah, it's going to be tight. Well, listen, guys, thank you so much for your input. It's actually flown by today. We'll be back next Wednesday at the same time. Everyone who's logged on and has joined the webinar will get an automatic invite to the next one. You don't have to re-register or do anything like that. You're on the sort of list now, so we'll do the same next Wednesday at 1 o'clock. We had one question about Jordan Henderson and the Saudi, and I think we'll answer that next week. We'll talk a bit about, I think we'll put Saudi Arabia and players returning on the list to talk about next Wednesday. But hopefully you've enjoyed what we've presented today. Thank you so much to Pete.
No worries, guys.
And thanks to Alex. And we'll see you next Wednesday. Cheers, guys. Bye.